How we reverse gazumped a greedy landlord in Los Angeles, and it was absolutely glorious. Posted by you/plotting revenge 15 YRS ago. 15 years ago, in the chaotic heart of Los Angeles, my friends and I orchestrated a revenge story so audacious and satisfying that it could have been the plot of a Hollywood movie. There were villains dripping with greed, a desperate family fighting for their home, a ticking clock, and a meticulously executed plan to turn the tables. What started as a devastating betrayal ended in poetic justice, and trust me, you'll want to grab some popcorn for this one. The setup, a dream that felt within reach. My best friend, her husband, and their 5 kids lived in a worn-down but functional 4-bedroom house in one of LA's older neighborhoods. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. The kitchen was ancient, with cabinets hanging on by a thread and a linoleum floor so old it had started curling at the edges. The drains often emitted a stench that could clear a room, and the wallpaper was peeling off in jagged strips as if even the house was tired of itself. Despite all that, it had a backyard big enough for the kids to play, and every corner of the house held memories they cherished. Their landlord, an eccentric but kind older woman, saw the value in the family beyond their rent checks. She had frozen their rent at $400 a week, an incredible deal even back then, and promised them that when they had saved enough for a loan, she would sell them the house at a fair price. For a family of 7 scraping by in Los Angeles, this promise was everything. For 5 years, they lived frugally, pinching every penny to save for a down payment. They skipped vacations, wore second-hand clothes, and cooked every meal at home. Every dollar saved brought them closer to their dream of owning the house and giving their kids stability in a city known for chewing people up and spitting them out. And then, just 2 days after they told the landlord they were ready to buy, tragedy struck. The old woman passed away suddenly. Her promises, though heartfelt, were never put in writing. The dream that had sustained my friends for years now seemed like it had slipped through their fingers. The new landlords, wolves in designer suits. Her estate was inherited by her 4 children, a quartet of soulless opportunists who were already drowning in wealth. Each one owned multiple properties, drove cars that cost more than most people's annual salaries, and spent weekends at private clubs where a single cocktail cost more than my rent. At first, they put on a convincing act. They told my friends they would honor their mother's agreement and asked them to wait for probate to settle. Believing these reassurances, my friends felt a flicker of hope. They even began making small improvements to the house, stripping the dated wallpaper, patching cracks, and dreaming about the upgrades they'd make once they officially owned it. But their optimism was short-lived. As soon as probate was finalized, the siblings revealed their true colors. They raised the asking price by $80,000 without warning and announced that the house would be put on the open market. An open house was scheduled in just 7 days. For my friends, it was like a gut punch. Their savings had been painstakingly calculated for the original price. The new figure was impossible for them to reach. Worse, with LA's red-hot housing market, the house was bound to attract buyers willing to pay far more than even the inflated price. If it sold, my friends would face either a massive rent increase or eviction. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Desperation breeds determination. Watching my friends wrestle with the crushing reality of their situation was heartbreaking. They had sacrificed so much to secure a future for their kids, only to have it ripped away by people who already had more than they could ever need. But here's the thing about injustice, it lights a fire. And here's the thing about me, I've never been one to let greed and cruelty win without a fight. While my friends scrambled to figure out how to scrape together more money in an impossibly short time frame, I started scheming. I wasn't just looking for a way to level the playing field, I wanted to take these entitled brats down a peg. If they thought they could bully a struggling family, they had no idea who they were dealing with. The plan, Operation Make This House Undesirable AF. I spent hours researching what makes houses sell or not sell. The key was to make the property as unappealing as possible without making my friends look like bad tenants. Every detail had to be perfectly calculated to deter potential buyers while keeping my friends out of trouble. We started with the interior. Every piece of furniture was rearranged to make the rooms feel smaller and more cramped. We borrowed mismatched chairs, cluttered bookshelves, and random decorations to create an overwhelming sense of disorganization. It looked less like a family home and more like a poorly run thrift store. Next came the smell. We boiled cabbage on the stove until the stench clung to the walls and furniture. For an extra touch, we poured a bit of ammonia near the front and back doors, creating an odor reminiscent of an unkempt animal shelter. Finally, 24 rotten eggs were poured down the drains, adding a faint but unmistakable hint of sewer gas to the air. But we didn't stop there. The neighborhood ambush. With the help of a neighbor, we placed a moldy, broken-down couch in their front yard, making the neighborhood look like it was straight out of a low-budget horror film. Friends with loud, clunky cars were recruited to drive up and down the street during the open house, creating the illusion of constant traffic. The piece de resistance was a faux block party. We invited my rugby teammates, a group of big, burly men with tattoos and leather jackets, to set up a barbecue in the neighbor's yard. They laughed loudly, drank beer, and gave off a rowdy, unpredictable vibe. To any potential buyer, it looked like the house was smack dab in the middle of Party Central. The open house, a masterpiece of chaos. The day of the open house was nothing short of spectacular. Prospective buyers arrived to a cacophony of revving engines, honking horns, and the unmistakable scent of boiled cabbage wafting through the air. One woman parked her car, took a single look at the scene, and promptly drove away. A brave man wandered inside but left quickly after overhearing one of the rugby guys casually mention the weekly parties and the constant sewer issues. Another buyer made it to the backyard but didn't even bother stepping into the house. By the end of the day, no serious buyers were left. My friend's offer, though still stretched thin, was the only one on the table. The sweet taste of victory. The siblings were livid, but there was nothing they could do. California's strict anti-gazumping laws ensured that once the offer was accepted, the sale was final. My friend signed the papers and paid the deposit that very day. When another buyer later tried to offer $30,000 more, it was too late. I would have paid good money to see the looks on those entitled siblings' faces when they realized they'd been outplayed. The aftermath, a house full of memories. Today, my friend still lived in that house. It's no longer the rundown wreck it once was, it's a warm, inviting home filled with love and laughter. The kitchen has been fully renovated, the drains are finally functional, and the wallpaper has been replaced with a fresh coat of paint. The cabbage smell is long gone, but the memory of that chaotic open house remains a family legend. Sometimes, justice isn't served in courtrooms, it's served with rotten eggs and a moldy couch. So here's the lesson: never underestimate the power of a determined family or their equally determined, petty friends. In a city like Los Angeles, where dreams are so often crushed, this one was made real. And it was glorious. Continued, The Long Shadow of Revenge. The immediate aftermath of the sale was filled with a mix of relief, disbelief, and a kind of smug satisfaction that only comes from knowing you've won against all odds. My friends finally had the security they dreamed of, but it wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about standing up to a system and a group of people that thought they could steamroll over anyone less fortunate. For weeks after the sale, the siblings tried to stir up trouble. First, they sent a lawyer's letter claiming there had been deliberate sabotage of the property during the open house. Of course, the letter went nowhere because everything we did was within legal bounds. It wasn't our fault the cabbage smell was so pervasive or that the neighborhood's new block party culture happened to align perfectly with the open house. Then came the thinly veiled threats. They insinuated they'd find ways to make my friends' lives difficult. Maybe there would be issues with the paperwork, or maybe a new lien would mysteriously appear. But my friends were ready. They had all their ducks in a row, and the law was firmly on their side. Eventually, the siblings gave up, moving on to other properties in their portfolio to squeeze for cash. But the bitterness lingered. For years, there were rumors about them in local real estate circles. Word of the disastrous open house had spread, and their reputation for being manipulative and greedy stuck to them like glue. Building a dream from the ashes. Once the paperwork was finalized and the house was officially theirs, my friends could finally breathe. But the work was just beginning. Owning a home meant tackling a long list of repairs and renovations that had been put off for years. The first project was the kitchen, which they tore down to the studs. I'll never forget helping them on demo day. It was cathartic to rip out those old, sagging cabinets and smash the stained countertops. It felt like we weren't just demolishing a kitchen, we were tearing down all the stress, fear, and uncertainty that had plagued them for so long. Slowly but surely, the house transformed. They replaced the plumbing, laid new flooring, and painted every room. Friends and family pitched in wherever they could. Some brought tools, others brought food, and a few just brought a sense of humor that made the hard work feel lighter. By the end of the first year, the house was unrecognizable. The kitchen gleamed with modern appliances, the drains no longer smelled like a swamp, and the backyard had been turned into a little oasis, complete with a pergola and a vegetable garden. Revenge is a dish best served quietly. Over the years, my friends occasionally crossed paths with the siblings at local events. The interactions were always frosty. The siblings couldn't hide their resentment, but my friends didn't care. They had their house, their home, and their happiness. Sometimes, when we're sitting in their cozy living room with a glass of wine, we'll joke about that wild week before the open house. The smell of cabbage, the loud cars, the rugby guys in leather jackets, it all seems so surreal now. But every time we retell the story, there's a moment of quiet reflection. Because beyond the laughter and the chaos, this wasn't just about a house. It was about fighting for what's right. It was about standing up to people who thought they could crush others just because they had money and power. And it was about proving that sometimes the little guy can win. Where they are now, 15 years later, my friends' lives are completely different. The kids are all grown up, and a few of them have even started families of their own. That house has seen graduations, weddings, and countless family gatherings. It's more than just a building, it's a legacy. And as for the neighborhood? Well, let's just say it's doing much better without moldy couches and faux block parties. The house has become a bright spot on the block, a testament to what can happen when people refuse to give up. Sometimes, when I drive by and see the house with its fresh coat of paint and its lovingly maintained garden, I feel an overwhelming sense of pride. Not just for what my friends accomplished, but for what we all accomplished together. Lessons learned. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that the underdog doesn't always have to lose. With a little creativity, a lot of determination, and the support of people who care, even the most impossible situations can be turned around. So the next time someone tells you there's no way forward, just remember this story. Remember that sometimes, justice isn't served in courtrooms or boardrooms, it's served in the smell of boiled cabbage, the roar of a motorcycle engine, and the laughter of rugby players enjoying a cold beer. And if you're ever lucky enough to meet people like those siblings, do me a favor, give them a wink, a smile, and a reminder that no matter how much money they have, karma always finds a way.